The year is 2017, and the air in the Gandi region feels heavy with the coming storm. Among the crowd of students heading to school, one boy stands out like a ghost in the machine. His name is Ji-gun, a transfer student who hasn't uttered a single word since his arrival. From a nearby alley, two local vagabonds watch his every move with narrow eyes. Suddenly, the screech of tires pierces through the morning chatter as a car hurtles down the street. Without a second of hesitation, Ji-gun lunges into the path of the oncoming vehicle. The car slams its brakes, stopping just inches from his stoic frame. An irate driver hops out screaming insults at the boy who nearly caused a tragedy. Ji-gun simply looks down at his feet where a shivering kitten huddles in safety. The driver grabs Ji-gun by the collar, accusing him of trying to scam for insurance money. Before the situation can escalate, a girl from Class 5 named Yena intervenes. She bows deeply to the driver, apologizing profusely on Ji-gun's behalf. The driver eventually grumbles and leaves, unable to resist her genuine plea. Yena turns to Ji-gun, asking if he is hurt, but he only responds with a blank stare. Nearby, the school's top bullies observe the interaction with growing jealousy. In the classroom, the atmosphere is loud and chaotic, yet Ji-gun sits like a statue. Girls from other classes crowd the doorway just to catch a glimpse of the silent prince. The peace is shattered when Taxu enters the room, his presence like a dark cloud. He walks straight to Ji-gun's desk, towering over the sitting boy with a sneer. Taxu mocks Ji-gun's silence, calling him a doll and poking at his arm. Ji-gun doesn't flinch, his eyes remaining fixed on a point in the distance. Taxu notices Yena watching with concern and grows even more frustrated. He challenges Ji-gun to a match during PE class, hoping to humiliate him in front of everyone. Later that day, the students gather in the gym for a game of foot volleyball. Taxu deliberately kicks the ball with lethal force toward Ji-gun's head. With effortless grace, Ji-gun sidesteps the projectile without even looking. The rest of the class giggles as Taxu misses his target completely. Embarrassed and enraged, Taxu decides to take the confrontation outside after school. As the final bell rings, rain begins to pour heavily over the Gandi region. Ji-gun walks into the downpour, ignoring the umbrellas and shelter of others. Taxu and his lackeys corner him in a secluded alleyway behind the sports field. Taxu throws Yena's phone into the mud, claiming she only cares for a freak. He launches a heavy haymaker aimed straight at Ji-gun's jaw. For the first time, Ji-gun reacts with violence, blocking the strike with a sharp elbow. In a blur of motion, Ji-gun delivers a straight punch that sends Taxu spinning into the asphalt. The other bullies freeze, terrified by the silent boy's sudden transition into a combat machine. Ji-gun stands over the fallen Taxu, his eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity. He picks up the muddy phone, wipes it on his sleeve, and walks away without a word. Far above, from the school roof, the gang leader Kang Doyle watches the entire fight with a sinister grin. He whispers to himself that a new toy has finally arrived in his territory. The screen fades to black as a message appears on the mud-stained phone screen. The message simply reads, "I know your secret, Silent One." Ji-gun stared at the glowing phone screen as the mysterious message burned into his mind. He looked around the empty corridor, feeling the weight of invisible eyes watching his every move. Ignoring the threat for now, he pocketed the device and continued his silent walk toward the exit. Suddenly, the heavy silence of the courtyard was shattered by the sound of rhythmic clapping. Taxu stepped out from behind a pillar, flanked by four massive underlings with sneering faces. The bully spit on the ground, his eyes fixed on Ji-gun's calm and expressionless face. Ji-gun simply stopped, his posture relaxed, but his muscles coiled like a hidden spring. Taxu demanded to know why a newcomer thought he could ignore the established order of the Gandi region. The only response Taxu received was the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of city traffic. Enraged by the lack of fear, Taxu ordered his men to teach the transfer student a lesson in humility. The first thug lunged forward, throwing a heavy right hook aimed directly at Ji-gun's jaw. With a movement too fast for the naked eye to track, Ji-gun parried the blow and struck back. The sound of a heavy impact echoed through the yard as the attacker was sent flying backward. Taxu's eyes widened in disbelief at the sheer power displayed by the silent boy. The remaining three underlings charged simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm him with numbers. Ji-gun closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, sensing the rhythm of their clumsy movements. He spun on his heel, delivering a devastating roundhouse kick that connected with two targets at once. They collapsed into a heap of groaning limbs, leaving only one standing before the silent legend. The last minion dropped his metal pipe and fled into the darkness of the school gates. Taxu pulled a butterfly knife from his pocket, his hand trembling despite his desperate bravado. Ji-gun didn't back down, taking a single step forward that seemed to shake the very earth. Taxu lunged with the blade, a wild and uncoordinated strike born of pure terror. Ji-gun caught the bully's wrist in midair, squeezing until the metal knife clattered to the floor. With a final silent push, he sent Taxu tumbling into the dirt, defeated and humiliated. From a high balcony, a tall figure in a dark leather jacket watched the entire fight in silence. Kang Doyle smirked, realizing that the new transfer student was exactly the challenge he had been seeking. Ji-gun walked home, the cool night air refreshing his face after the heat of the battle. He stopped by the park where he had saved the kitten, seeing it safe and playing near a bench. For the first time, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of his lips. His peace was interrupted by his phone vibrating again, this time with a video file. The video showed a terrified girl, Arium, sitting in a dark room with her hands tied. Arium was the only one who hadn't judged him for his silence, often leaving small notes on his desk. Seeing her in danger caused a surge of cold fury to rush through Ji-gun's veins. A voice message followed the video, belonging to none other than Kang Doyle. Doyle invited him to the old construction site at midnight if he wanted to see the girl again. He warned that any police involvement would lead to the permanent silence of the girl. Ji-gun stood up, his eyes now glowing with an unnatural, intense blue light. He began to walk toward the outskirts of the city, where the skeletal remains of the unfinished buildings loomed. He knew this was a trap, but for Arium, he was willing to walk into the heart of the dragon's den. As he stepped through the gates, the heavy metal doors slammed shut behind him with a deafening boom. High above on the scaffolding, dozens of red glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. The air became thick with the scent of oil, rust, and impending violence. A spotlight suddenly ignited, blinding Ji-gun and revealing Arium suspended in a cage over a deep pit. Kang Doyle's laughter echoed through the hollow building, sounding like grinding metal. Ji-gun clenched his fists, the sound of his leather gloves stretching being the only noise he allowed himself to make. Just as the first wave of gang members dropped from the ceiling, Ji-gun noticed a bomb timer attached to Arium's cage. The red numbers on the bomb timer attached to Arium's cage flickered with a haunting rhythmic pulse. Ji-gun stood perfectly still as the first wave of gang members leaped from the shadows above. He pivoted on his left heel just as a metal pipe whistled through the air where his head had been. Without a word, he drove a stiff palm into the attacker's chest, sending a shockwave through the man's ribs. Kang Doyle sat on a throne of rusted crates, casually tossing Ji-gun's phone between his hands. 3 more thugs charged simultaneously, their faces twisted in desperate greed for the reward. Ji-gun grabbed the leading man's wrist and used his momentum to flip him into his oncoming comrades. He glanced toward the cage, noting that only 60 seconds remained on the ticking device. His aura suddenly flared, the sheer pressure of his silence causing the rain to bounce off him. He sprinted forward, a blue blur cutting through the ranks of the terrified gang. A heavy kick landed on Ji-gun's shoulder, but he didn't even flinch as he countered with a sweeping strike. Arium pressed her palms against the glass of the cage, her silent scream echoing in her eyes. Kang Doyle finally stood up, realizing his underlings were no match for the silent monster. Ji-gun reached the cage and hammered his fist against the electronic lock with brutal force. Kang Doyle launched a flying knee, aiming directly for Ji-gun's exposed temple. Ji-gun caught the knee with his forearm and delivered a punishing elbow to Doyle's solar plexus. The timer reached 10 seconds, its beeping now a continuous, shrill whistle. With a final silent roar of effort, Ji-gun tore the cage door off its hinges. He grabbed Arium and shielded her with his own body just as the countdown hit 0. The bomb turned out to be a massive glitter and smoke trap, coating the entire rooftop in shimmering dust. Kang Doyle laughed through the smoke, admitting he just wanted to see the legend's true face. Ji-gun slowly stood up, glitter clinging to his damp school uniform like stars. Arium looked up at him, her fear replaced by a profound sense of safety. He walked toward Doyle, his hand extended for the phone one last time. Doyle tossed the device back, acknowledging that Ji-gun was indeed the strongest in the region. Ji-gun caught it effortlessly and tucked it away without checking for damage. The thunderstorm began to subside, leaving a heavy, peaceful silence over the Gandi district. He offered his hand to Arium, helping her stand amidst the debris of the battle. She pulled out her own phone and typed a message that made Ji-gun's eyes soften. The screen read, "Thank you for being my voice today." Ji-gun nodded once, his silence no longer a wall, but a bridge between them. Below them, the defeated gang members watched in awe as the two silent students walked away. They descended the stairs together, two shadows merging into one under the streetlights. Arium realized that for the first time in her life, she didn't feel lonely in her quiet world. The rumors about the silent transfer student would only grow more legendary after tonight. Jigun knew his vow of silence would remain, but his heart had finally found a rhythm. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, the boy with blue hair walked toward a new dawn. He reached into his pocket and sent his very first text message to Arium. The message simply contained a single heart emoji, speaking volumes more than any words ever could. The legend of the silent student of Gandi was complete, leaving behind a legacy of quiet strength and unspoken love.